Imagine your phone is dead, the internet does not exist, dinner is over, and the sun has just dropped behind the trees. There are no books, no television, and no helpful little rectangle willing to serve you 17 videos about a raccoon stealing cat food. You have a fire, a few relatives, some rocks, and several hours before sleep. Welcome to prehistoric prime time. So what did ancient humans do when absolutely nothing urgent was happening? The honest answer begins with an annoying fact. Boredom does not fossilize. Archaeologists can recover a flute, a bead, or a pile of chipped stone, but not the feeling inside the person who made it. No cave wall says, "Tuesday, bored again." That means we cannot prove that boredom created art, music, or storytelling. We can, however, combine archaeological evidence, observations of recent hunter-gatherer communities, and what psychology tells us about idle minds. The result is less certain than a time machine, but considerably easier to park. First, prehistoric life was difficult, but it was not necessarily a non-stop action movie. Hunting, gathering, carrying water, and processing food consumed real time and energy. So did tending children, maintaining tools, treating injuries, and avoiding animals with very unfriendly dental plans. Yet those jobs arrived in rhythms. A hunt ended, food cooked, rain trapped everyone under shelter. Winter nights stretched longer than anyone's enthusiasm. Even people living close to survival had pauses between urgent tasks. Older accounts sometimes claimed foragers worked only 15 or 20 hours a week, but that famous number leaves out a great deal, especially food processing, childcare, and other essential labor. More complete time use studies show that small-scale societies can work far more than the legend suggests, and living hunter-gatherers are not museum replicas of the Stone Age. Still, these communities demonstrate something important. A life without offices is not a life without schedules, and a life built around subsistence is not automatically a life with zero social time. Ancient humans probably experienced rest, waiting, and unstructured moments. Whether they called that feeling boredom is unknowable. When spare time appeared, one likely answer was play. Children probably chased, wrestled, copied adults, and threw objects, turning ordinary materials into imaginary ones, because children have been converting inconvenient objects into toys for as long as parents have been stepping on them. Archaeologists sometimes find tiny tools, imperfect practice pieces, small handprints, and activity areas that may preserve children learning through imitation. The interpretation is rarely certain. A miniature spear could be a toy, a teaching tool, a ritual object, or simply a spear made by someone whose first attempt went badly. But play would have rehearsed movement, cooperation, tool use, and social rules without every mistake ending in dinner escaping over the horizon. Adults also had the Stone Age equivalent of hobbies, although many were useful enough to avoid that label. They repaired spear points, softened hides, and twisted fibers into cord. They shaped wood, ground pigment, and taught younger hands how not to ruin good stone. These tasks could be repetitive, social, and oddly satisfying. Think less doing nothing and more keeping your hands busy while your cousin tells the same hunting story for the 9th time. A repaired tool helped tomorrow's survival, but the hours spent making it also created room for conversation, experimentation, and style. Utility and entertainment did not need separate calendars. Then there are objects that went beyond immediate survival. At Bizmoune Cave in Morocco, researchers found perforated sea snail shells from deposits at least 142,000 years old. The shells show wear and traces suggesting they were suspended, probably as personal ornaments. Nobody spends that much effort on a tiny shell because it improves spear aerodynamics. The beads may have signaled identity, belonging, or status, an ancient way of saying who you were before profile pictures made the process much louder. Farther south, Blombos Cave preserves an ochre processing workshop around 100,000 years old, along with engraved ochre, shell beads, and a small stone flake marked with a red crosshatch design about 73,000 years ago. It looks a little like a hashtag. Thankfully, no comment section survived. We cannot label the maker bored, and the marks may have carried serious social or symbolic meaning. What we can say is that early humans invested attention in color, pattern, and display, activities that transformed spare material into shared meaning. Music leaves an even fainter trail. Roughly 40,000 years ago, people in what is now southwestern Germany made flutes from bird bone and mammoth ivory. One nearly complete bird bone flute from Hohle Fels had 5 fingerholes and demanded the kind of careful work that does not pair well with impatience. The maker had to cut and smooth the bone, place the holes, and shape the mouthpiece so the instrument produced controlled notes instead of an expensive wheeze. That does not prove somebody invented music during a boring afternoon. Music may be much older because voices, clapping, stamping feet, wooden beaters, and stretched hides usually disappear without leaving archaeologists a playlist. Whatever its origin, music was perfectly built for unstructured time. It could coordinate dancing, soothe children, strengthen rituals, display skill, or simply make a dark evening less dark. A group needed no stage. The audience was already sitting by the fire, and leaving early meant walking into predator territory. Excellent crowd retention. Fire may have been the greatest entertainment device before electricity. It cooked food and discouraged predators, but it also extended social life beyond daylight. A study of conversations among Huansi communities in southern Africa found a striking contrast. Daytime talk focused more on work and social problems, while long evening conversations around fires were dominated by stories. This is not a recording of the Paleolithic, and the Huansi are modern people with their own history. But the pattern offers a useful possibility. Once practical work slowed and faces gathered in firelight, attention could move from what must happen now to what happened before, what might happen later, and what existed only in imagination. Stories were not disposable entertainment. They could carry knowledge about landscapes, animals, relatives, and dangers, as well as alliances, rules, and people far beyond the camp. A good story made information memorable. A funny one made people request it again. It also allowed listeners to rehearse social situations without personally testing every bad decision. One reckless hunter could become a lesson for 3 generations. Very efficient. Depending on the storyteller, possibly not flattering. Conversation itself filled enormous amounts of time. People joked, teased, argued, flirted, remembered the dead, and settled tensions. They exchanged news and discussed who had behaved badly, which is a scholarly way of saying gossip survived perfectly well without Wi-Fi. These exchanges maintained relationships that mattered when food was shared, children needed care, or one camp needed help from another. An evening that produced no tool could still produce trust. In a small group, that may have been more valuable than another sharpened rock. Idle moments may also have encouraged experimentation. Modern laboratory studies have sometimes found that people produce more creative answers after a simple, boring task, while other research shows that mind-wandering can help incubate solutions. But boredom is not a magic creativity potion. It can motivate exploration, or it can produce frustration, risky behavior, and a determined search for the nearest snack. The useful ingredient is not suffering. It is giving the mind enough space to notice connections that urgent work keeps hidden. For ancient humans, that space might have appeared while watching a fire, scraping a hide, or waiting for animals. It might also have appeared while walking a familiar route or listening to someone repair a story that had clearly become more heroic since last winter. A new knot, rhythm, pigment mixture, tool shape, or tail did not need to begin as a grand invention. It could begin as a small variation. Most variations probably failed and vanished. A few were useful, beautiful, memorable, or funny enough for someone else to copy. Culture grew through those copied experiments, not through one dramatic moment when a bored genius invented civilization before lunch. So how did ancient humans kill boredom? Probably by resting, talking, grooming, playing, repairing, decorating, singing, and dancing. They told stories, watched weather, watched animals, and occasionally watched another person make a very avoidable mistake. Sometimes they may simply have stared into the fire. To be fair, fire has excellent graphics. The key is that spare time was often shared and materials were close at hand. Instead of consuming an endless supply of finished entertainment, people frequently had to create the next interesting thing themselves. That does not mean every quiet hour produced a flute or a philosophy. Most quiet hours were probably just quiet. But across thousands of generations, repeated moments of play, conversation, practice, and wandering attention gave ideas somewhere to appear, and communities a way to keep the best ones. Ancient humans did not defeat boredom once and for all. They kept turning it into patterns, rhythms, jokes, tools, and stories. And the next time your phone battery reaches zero, you can treat it as a minor emergency, or as a historically accurate creative opportunity. Your ancestors would probably understand both reactions. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into prehistoric downtime useful, or at least more entertaining than staring at a rock, please like the video and subscribe. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive, even when your battery isn't.